Hey, it's David. Let's have a look at how we can mount the spring side of the bobber seat. In the last episode, I mounted the swivel mount on the front so that the seat's now fixed at the front. And in this episode, what we need to do is to find a way of fixing it at the back. Now, I reckon the height should be about here. That means that this part of the saddle is flat. And if you look at the old photos, that's pretty much how they're set. Now, the way that these were mounted at the time was not with the springs you see very commonly nowadays, but with a single seat post. Very much like a bicycle saddle. I mean, if you imagine, this looks like a bicycle saddle because that's where they came from. And like a bicycle saddle, it's just got a single seat post that sticks up the back. And the difference between this and a normal bicycle is that that seat post was sprung. There was a spring down the centre of it, and it would move up and down. And you can actually get them for bicycles nowadays, which means it would be very easy to put this on here, and it would then look, in my opinion, great, because it would replicate the look. The problem with that is that those seat posts have to be this big. So we've got this spring running down the centre here, which is exactly where we would need to put our suspension seat post. And this is a short BMX seat post, but as you can see, there's just no way, even at maximum travel, to get any sort of meaningful suspension movement at a height that's going to allow the saddle to sit low enough. That doesn't mean to say I'm going to stop looking, because whatever I do at the back here, I can always change. That's the whole point of this particular build, is that I'm doing nothing structural. I'm not changing the bike in any way, except to unbolt things and rebolt new things on. And that means if I want to change the seat mounting at the back here, I will be able to do so. So if I can find something that's a really short suspension post for a bicycle, I might give it a go. But it's going to have to be really short, because we've only got 4 or 5 inches. Now this doesn't need a lot of springing, and after all, the springs you typically get on these are 2 or 3 inches long, so that's not unachievable. I'm going to keep looking, but for now I need to do something else. So if I put aside the single suspension seat post, then I'm back to the sort of traditional bicycle saddle springs. Now, Harley did use these at the same sort of time period, mostly on the sort of lightweight sports through type bikes. So that would work. Now, that seat spring here, the bolt that you can just see sticking down here, is at a real angle on this seat. And if I was to do that, then it really would hitch straight back into this mudguard here. So that's really not workable. So I'm going to have to modify this. I can't de-upholster the seat. Well, I could, but I'm not going to. So I need to bolt something to here that's going to mount this further back, and then probably run some sort of cross brace in between, so that this perhaps sits more like this here. It's not very visible perhaps, but if I bring it out. So it's sitting at an angle here. They often actually do sit vertically like this. And that's another option. But how do I get there? Well, since I've got bicycle bits lying around, this actually is a handlebar post. But if you turn it round and you do hold it like this, then cut it off, say here, make a new one, this it would be anyway. So have something angled up like this, spring in there, and then the saddle can come down. I'll bring this to where we're looking at. So that'll sit like that. The spring will sit in the centre of it, and so cut off here, make a new mount at the top, and that should be strong enough to take the back end. replicate on the other side. So that's my plans at the moment. So let's see how well that works out. Starting point is to create a mounting point. Now I've used tube. I considered a couple of different alternatives, like a square tube with a rounded end welded on, or welded up I should say, but it's square and it's the same issue I had with the other bracket. So I've started off with a piece of round tube. It'll just give me a starting point to work to, and then I need to, I've found if I keep this piece of cardboard flat, this is a cutout from the base of this piece of metal, just as a random shape really. So if I keep that there and I mount a spring there, raise it up on a piece of tube, then it actually comes quite close in to that mounting point there. So if I now cut another piece of tube and then create an angle cut on it to match that one, that can bolt to the bottom of it, that can bolt through a piece of tube onto the piece of cardboard or a piece of steel cut to that size, and then this can be mounted onto this bracket here. So that's the plan. Let's try cutting some more tube. Cut another piece of tube, and I've cut an angle on the top which roughly eyeballed is the same angle as the top of the seat, so say it is roughly angled. Then need to eyeball where it's going to sit above this seat. So the spring will sit on the bottom of it. Now the springs are not a flat top to them, so they're always a bit wobbly. So if that's going to sit there, the overlap's going to be about there, I reckon. So having chamfered the top, I've now cut a wedge at the tube there, which means that it can now nest behind there. It's still not quite the right angle, I don't think, but some of that can be corrected when welding it up. So that will allow me to mount the spring underneath. So then I've just got a final piece of tube to sit underneath, like that. More filing done. The trouble with tube is that it just takes so long to get it right. If you're working with bigger tube, it's not quite so bad, I don't think, but with this little tube, especially in a situation like this where you're trying to work behind something here to try and get that right, then it does become hard. But before I go any further, what I do need to deal with is how I'm going to attach something to here. I'm going to take the opportunity to actually put a washer in the bottom of that and use that as a pointer to where I need this to go when I weld it up. So I've been playing around for quite a while now. I've got this piece of tube and I've welded a nut into it so that I can bolt this to it. I've also got a bit of scrap steel just bolted in here temporarily because it will give me a base. That's exactly what I'm looking to build from, so that the theory I was looking at is that I would be able to do this, join those two pieces of tube, and then have another piece of tube down to here. But the only way that's really going to work is this angle slightly. That's probably okay to have an angle because we're pivoting from here, so that really should be on a 90 degree from this pivot point rather than being flat this way or this way. Doesn't really work when it's this way because if the seat goes down, this part of the seat, the attachment, is going in a curve like this. If the spring is going that way, then it's trying to bend the spring this way, which is no good. If you take a line through here through to the middle of the spring, then that's going to be the plane it should be on, so that could still work. Right, I'm actually going to mock up with a piece of tube on here and just see what it looks like. Right, let's see if I can make this work. I'm slightly two minds about whether I need to angle that tube or not. So let's see, how does it look? That's looking reasonably square. Let's take this pillion pad out of the way. I think that could work. Right, so I've just actually ground about a 10-degree angle on the bottom of that piece of tube, and now it runs nice and straight all the way up. I'm just going to give it a practice and see if I can get a washer and a nut on the bottom there, because that's always a difficult thing with these springs. It is without doubt really fiddly getting a nut on here. There we go. So I think I'm going to go with that. Or will I? Now, this was a useful exercise in mocking up. When I came in this morning, I actually expected to finish this whole job in one session. I had a very clear idea of what I wanted to do, and I knew exactly how I wanted to do it. Only of course, when you start to do it, that's when things change. I'm not so much an ideas man. I like to actually do things with my hands and actually see what happens, and then that will give me new ideas. What I've done today would work, absolutely. I wouldn't be using those tiny little bits of tube because they were too small. That's something I did find out quite early on, but as a mocking up exercise, it works. I've got two courses going forward. One is to do something fairly similar to what I've done, and the other to do something completely different. Now, to do something completely different, I've got something in mind. I know what I want to do. I don't know whether I can work it. I don't know whether I can get the materials to do it. So this might have to go on hold for a little bit while I play with some ideas. But you guys will watch this. I'm sure some of you have got ideas, so feel free to make some comments below the video as to what you think would work, and who knows, you might come up with something that I've not thought of, a new angle that would work. So anyway, please do that if you have ideas. Otherwise, thanks very much for watching, and I will see you guys again soon.